Hey, what's up, guys? I'm coming back at you with my UFC 117 predictions. This card's coming up in less than 2 weeks right now, so this is looking like a huge card. Some huge fights, some great fights on the main card, and a lot of big names, good fights in the undercard too. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this into two videos, one with my undercard predictions and one with my main card predictions, because there's just more than 10 minutes worth of stuff to talk about here. So, yeah, without further ado, first fight on the undercard is Rodney Shonuff the Master Wallace versus Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis. Wallace was supposed to fight Stanislav Nedkov, this undefeated European prospect, but Nedkov got hurt while training, so Davis stepped in to fight him, or to fight Wallace. Wallace is 0-2 here in the UFC. He lost a unanimous decision to Brian Stann back at the Ultimate Fighter Heavyweights finale, and he lost a split decision to Jared Hammond at UFC 111, and that was the fight of the night. And Davis is undefeated, and he's 2-0 in the UFC. He had a win over Brian Stann back at UFC 109, and he beat Alexander Gustafsson by guillotine choke at UFC 112. So I think this is a terrible matchup stylistically for Wallace, just because Davis is another one of those young, strong wrestler types who's just into ragdolling guys and just dominating this fight. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Davis is just going to throw Wallace around for 3 rounds and pull out a unanimous decision. And on top of that, I think Wallace is going to fall to 0-3, winning if he loses his fight. So I think the UFC is going to give him the old pink slip, and he'll be cut. And if and when Davis wins this matchup, I think people are going to start talking about him the way they talked about John Jones about a year ago, because he's, again, a young, explosive, I'm going to say a black athlete who's just ripping through people right now. So, he's going to start making headlines here at UFC, here in the light heavyweight division. Next fight up is Dennis Hallman versus Ben Saunders at welterweight. Saunders was on The Ultimate Fighter 6, his past 2 fights. He knocked out Marcus Davis at UFC 106 with some nasty knees, and he lost a unanimous decision to John Fitch at UFC 111, but that's really nothing to be ashamed of. And Hallman has been around for a while. He's been fighting for 10 years, I'd say. And he's got great grappling, and I'd say his claim to fame is the fact that he holds 2 submission wins over Matt Hughes from back when before Hughes was the UFC champion. And they're both submissions, and they were both within 20 seconds. Both times Hughes just kind of came in on a double leg, and Hallman let him have it and threw on a guillotine once and an armbar the second time. But first off, that was like 7 or 8 years ago. And second, Saunders isn't going to try and take this to the ground. I think he's going to use his Muay Thai, use his striking to just pick Hallman apart, with his knees and his head kicks. And I think he's going to wear him down and finish him sometime in the second round. So yeah, Ben Saunders by TKO. Next fight up is Charlie Brenneman versus Johnny Hendricks. Brenneman's 11-1, and he has 1 win in the UFC, and that's over Jason High. His only loss was to Gerald Harris, and that was a few years ago before he was in the UFC. Or John Howard, not Gerald Harris, my bad. And Hendricks is undefeated at 8-0. He's 3-0 in the UFC with wins over Amir Sadallah, Ricardo Funch, and TJ Grant most recently. And Hendricks has some of the best wrestling in the the welterweight division. He was a 3-time national finalist at Oklahoma State University. And Brenneman's got a wrestling background, but it's nowhere near that of Johnny Hendricks. So I think Hendricks is going to dominate this fight. He's pretty explosive too with his striking. So, Hendricks, I think, is just more well-rounded than Brenneman is. So I see Hendricks pulling out a decision victory here too. Next fight up is a heavyweight fight between Stefan the Skyscraper Struve and Christian World of Moorcraft. Moorcraft is making his UFC debut here. I couldn't really find any information about him. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. But Struve in his last fight lost by KO to Roy Nelson like 40 seconds into the fight. And I think with this fight, he's going to try to get back to using his height and his reach to his advantage, and try to use his jiu-jitsu because his legs really help him with that. And I think he's just going to use good leg kicks, use some high kicks, and just kind of push Morecraft around and finish him with submission late first round, early second round. I'm going to say second round submission by choke for Stefan Struve. And then the final fight, or rather not the final fight, but next fight is what's his name? I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking here. Dustin Hazlett versus Rick Story. Hazlett is a jiu-jitsu black belt, but he's only had 2 fights within the last 2 years. He won by submission over I can't even remember the guy's name. He's not a big name. Back in like November of 2008, and then most recently, at the beginning of this year, he got, or not the beginning of this year. Yeah, the beginning of this year, he got knocked out by Paul Daly at UFC 108, and that was a pretty bad knockout. Daly really rocked him. He was on medical suspension for like 6 months. And Rick Story, he's a very well-rounded, tough welterweight. He's got 3 wins here in the UFC. He's beaten Jesse Lennox, Nick Osimczak, and Brian Foster. His win over Foster at UFC 103 was a fight of the night, and it was a submission of the night. It was an arm triangle choke. So, I think he's just well-rounded. He's going to be comfortable wherever this fight goes. I think he's going to get the better of the striking, and I think he is going to be able to avoid getting submitted by Hazlett, who hasn't submitted anyone quality in well over 2 years. So, and I'll be honest, I just don't like Dustin Hazlett. I don't know what it is about him. Maybe it's the fact that he hasn't won in 2 years and he's still around, but I don't know. I just don't like him. So I'm hoping to see Story, dominate him here. Maybe get him cut from the UFC. I don't know. But yeah, I think Hazlett's gonna get dominated in this fight by Rick Story. I'm gonna go with a unanimous decision for Story. And the last fight of the night, this is kind of keeping up with the Brazil versus USA theme that's on the main card. This is Thiago Silva versus Tim Bosch. I think this was supposed to be on the main card, but then John Fitch versus Thiago Alves got moved to this card, so Silva versus Bosch got moved down to the undercard, which I think sucks. But Silva's coming off a loss to Rashad Evans back at UFC 108. He was hurt during that fight, but he still managed to rock Evans in the 3rd round and almost finished the fight, but wasn't able to do that. But anyhow, I think Silva is just going to run over Bosch. I think he's going to finish him in the 1st round, 3 or 4 minutes into the fight. So I think we are going to see this fight on the main card, just between fights, because Silva was. He was in the main event fighting Rashad Evans, who's now set to fight Shogun for the title. So I don't see why he should have to be relegated to the undercard. So I think he's going to want to make this a big knockout. Make a statement saying, hey, I'm still really good. So yeah, I've got Thiago Silva, knockout or TKO in the 1st round. So those are my undercard picks, and I will be right back at you with my main card picks shortly.